Hi, welcome Brightlights to Healers with Humor, a podcast brought to you by Candice, the visionary behind Indiglow Soul, and Shelly, the owner of Finding Your Light. Join us as we explore the intricacies of our healing experiences and share the wisdom we've accumulated along the way. In each episode, we're going to invite you into our intimate conversations where we candidly explore the highs and the lows of our healing experiences. Through our podcast, we want to extend our hands to those navigating their own path of healing, offering a sanctuary of understanding and companionship. Whether you're navigating through the shadows of self-doubt or reveling in the glow of self-discovery, Healers with Humor is there to honor the strength that it takes to heal and celebrate the joys of self-love and growth. Join us on this journey, embracing the beauty of healing and the power of community. Hello, Brightlights. I'm Shelly.
And I'm Candice.
And welcome to Healers with Humor, Season 1, Episode 8. What is an empath? How does being an empath impact the body, mind, and spirit? All right, Candice, you are definitely the empath expert in the room with us today. So I'd like to understand, give me a really good definition of what being an empath is, because I think the general definition is pretty inaccurate.
Agree. I think people throw that word around quite a bit and don't fully understand what it means. So being an empath, you are feeling and you're absorbing other people's emotions and their physical symptoms because of your high sensitivities. You filter the world through your intuition and have a difficult time intellectualizing your feelings. So what that means is you are putting everything that you come into contact with goes through a different lens than someone who's not an empath. And what does that actually mean? As an empath, you have hyper responsive mirror neurons. And this allows you to deeply understand and resonate with other people, with their feelings and their emotions. So that is essentially what an empath is. Let's talk about what empathy is, because you can have empathy and not be an empath.
Oh.
And so empathy is really the ability to sense other people's emotions, coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. So the difference, right? As an empath, we're actually sensing others' emotions, energies, their physical symptoms in our bodies without the use of the filters that most people have. So empaths feel things first and then think, where most people think first and then feel.
So how is that different than highly sensitive people?
So highly sensitive people are similar to empaths because they have a low threshold for stimulation. They need more alone time, and they do have a sensitivity to light, sound, or smell, or an aversion to large groups. But a highly sensitive person is not absorbing the emotions of others around them. They're just overstimulated or sensitive to those things.
So how would an empath react differently then? So a highly sensitive person would need time alone and feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
How might an empathic person feel?
So they're going to feel similar, but they are going to experience it in their bodies more than a highly sensitive person. So a highly sensitive person will be like, I need to, have some alone time. And they might, read a book or, listen to some music or whatever they do in their alone time. An empath is going to be physically in their body somewhere feeling the energy of others. So they are also going to have those sensitivities, but they are going to, feel it in their throat chakra or their third eye a little bit more. They're going to feel if someone that they were around had a backache, they could potentially have a backache. So when they're in their downtime, they're going to be in pain. The highly sensitive person isn't going to be in pain because of someone else's pain.
Yeah. So this reminds me, I'm also an empath, and actually you've taught me a lot about it because frankly, I just wasn't paying attention to it, right? I kind of looked at it as a sideline thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I was at a get together one day and I just couldn't wait to get out of there. And it just didn't feel like my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I left, it cleared. And I realized that it wasn't mine. It was someone else's. I was taking on someone else's being uncomfortable at the get together.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to realize that the things I was feeling weren't my own. They felt kind of foreign or over exaggerated for how I know myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize at first that that was what being an empath felt like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I didn't know a lot about when I first started my journey either. And, we've talked about in previous episodes where, I feel pain in my body. That's how my body talks to me. And I've probably shared the story before, but I had this pain on the bottom of my foot. And what ended up coming out from that is that I had stored my family's emotions. I had absorbed them like an empath does.
Oh.
And I had absorbed emotions that were not mine, that did not belong to me. But I felt so deeply and experienced other people's emotions so physically that they were balled up in the bottom of my foot. And once we released through the emotion code, we released all of that energy, that pain went away completely. And so that's when I did a deep dive into being an empath. I was like, I need to understand more about this. I need to understand why my body's doing this, how I prevent my body from doing this. I don't want everybody else's energy in my energy. And so over the last 5 or 6 years, this is what I've done. This is, I've done a deep dive into understanding my own empath abilities, my strengths, my weaknesses. And one of the first podcasts that I listened to in understanding what an empath it's called Know Your Aura, and it's from Mystic Michaela. She reads auras, and she talks about empath. So you have an empath aura and a logical aura. You usually have 2 colors. It's actually how I named my business.
Oh.
So I have my aura colors are indigo and yellow. And so Indiglow is a combination of indigo and yellow.
I love that.
Yeah. So being an empath doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? It's not like, oh, you're an empath, I'm so sorry. We have all of these beautiful gifts and we get to harness them. And we've talked about the clairs before, but, really our empath superpowers are our clairs. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's not, it's nothing to be afraid of or ashamed of. It's really just something to understand how your body is responding to the world, right? And so there's different types of empaths. I have a free ebook on my website that you can download that talks about understanding and nurturing your empathic self. And it goes through probably the core, 4 types of empaths, although we know that there are more, and we'll talk about those a little bit, but really help you understand what kind of empath you might be. So for me, you can be more than one type of empath. That's, I think, important to understand. I'm an emotional empath. I am a physical empath. I am an intuitive empath. And so what that essentially means is that from an emotional empath standpoint, right, I'm physically feeling the emotions of other people in my body. Many of us can actually experience and integrate the emotions of our families and don't realize what's happening until we leave home. Or in my case, in my early 40s. And so, it might seem as if the emotions of others are contagious, right? And this is because of those mirror neurons that I talked about. So researchers have found that there's a specific group of brain cells that are responsible for the ability to show and feel compassion. And us as empaths, right, have these hyper responsive mirror neurons. So again, this is, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but when you're watching a movie, right, and someone's crying, or, you're walking down the street or someone's in the grocery store and you see someone crying, you just instantly cry. It's because you're responding, your hyper responsive mirror neurons are responding to that other person. And so that's really the emotional empath piece. So we talk a lot about, absorbing, right, energy and emotions and all of that. And essentially, we want to keep our empath abilities without always being burdened or bombarded by the energy and the emotions. And so again, in this ebook, I talk a lot about how to protect your energy and how to clear your energy. So those are two big pieces about understanding how to be an empath and how to show up in the world as a empowered empath.
Yeah, so you certainly taught me more about not only the type of empath I was, but how it was affecting my body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and you went through my Empowered Empath program.
I did. And so I learned that I am an emotional and intuitive empath.
Mm-hmm.
And until I really understood that, frankly, I just thought I read faces and, people's reactions. I'm just more observant than other people. And it didn't really occur to me that I was actually taking in more than just a face, right? Than just a facial expression. But one of the things that you mentioned, right, and you might not realize until you leave home or until 40, certainly didn't know that I was an empath until my 40s. But one of the things that was an interesting learning for me is I had been biting my nails my entire life, like from a toddler, and I left home to go to college at 17. The week I left home is the week I stopped biting my nails, and I've never bit them since.
Wow.
Right. But not understanding as a child, right, that you're an empath taking in everyone else's, emotions.
Yeah.
It's a great example of if nail biting, right, is something that you do by compulsion, how did it all of a sudden stop? And I did.
Yeah. Your environment changed.
Yeah.
Right. The things that you were taking on that were stressing you out in your environment shifted. So you were still interacting, right, with your family unit, but you weren't physically living in their energy anymore.
Right. And through the program, you and I really understood more about the physical effects on my body. And I think that was huge. Learning that my body's sweating is my body's way of detoxing, because I didn't have an understanding of energy healing and removing and protecting. And then also understanding what it had been doing and where it had been storing things in my organs, my glands, and within my systems.
Yes.
So certainly one of the things that the program focused on was evaluating my overall body, and then focusing in on certain organ systems and glands to really remove stored energy from others, or, along the way, over 40 years, so that I was really working from a more neutral place, right? And I had to do daily clearing and protecting, but really removing the history.
Yes.
And I think that, certainly one of the things that we dove into is childhood.
Oh, yeah.
And decision making.
Yeah. That's, our childhoods really are the foundation, right, of what we build things on. So even just from a, beliefs standpoint, right? So our foundation of what we're building our personalities on and how we respond to things are based on our subconscious. And that's the real key to this energy work is connecting into the subconscious so that our brains, our ego is not the one that's like, oh yeah, this is where something needs to be cleared, because that can hijack, our egos can really hijack what we work on because it doesn't want us necessarily to release the stuff, right? So by connecting into the subconscious, with a pendulum, just the energy work that I do, I work with a pendulum. We're able to really pinpoint where do you have those trapped energies, those stored emotions? Are they in your eyes? Are they impacting how you actually view the world? Is it in your liver? Do you have high cholesterol? Is it, impacting your blood pressure? Do you have a heart wall? All of those things are what we work on in the Empowered Empath program to help you really understand your own energy. And for me, a lot, again, over the last 5 or 6 years, I've had to peel away the energy that I was holding for everybody else. I had really lost who I was.
Oh.
It was, again, one of the things that brought me to this energy healing was, who is Candice, right? Like, I know I've followed the path of least resistance. I, went to college, I graduated, I worked really hard. I, climbed the corporate ladder. I got married. I had these, friendships. I did all the things that I was supposed to do, but at the end of the day, I wasn't super happy. I felt like there was more that needed to be explored for myself. And being an empath was really the key that unlocked all of that for me. And I was able to, I don't want to say strip away, but I was able to release the junk, the emotional baggage that I was holding for everybody else. And once I was able to do that, I, cleared my lenses, so to speak. And I got back to who Candice is and what,
Oh.
what do I like? What do I want? Somebody would ask me, what do you do for fun? What do I do for fun? Who's having fun? Right? Like, I go to work, I come home, I watch some Housewives of somewhere, and I go to bed and I do it all over again. Right? Like, so it really helps. It helps you explore and get back to who, who you are authentically, having the courage to peel back all of the layers to get back to that authentic Candice.
Yeah, I definitely think that it helps me understand decisions that I've made. And I'll say whose interest that I had made them in
Mm-hmm.
when you take the empath piece into consideration. I think it, certainly you've mentioned it, the piece about taking back personal power and really protecting personal power.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were two things that I had questions about. So do empaths, as you focus in, really help empaths in particular, do they absorb more emotions? And do you find more stored than the average person? Or
Yes.
is it who's they're storing?
So empaths are 100% absorbing
Mm.
emotions. And it's funny in the literature that I, in the certifications that I've gone through for body code and emotion code, there's a specific section on absorbed energy. And it says in the literature, not many people have absorbed energy.
Oh, really?
I thought, well, those people aren't coming to see me because everybody I see has absorbed energy. So to your point, I really do work with empaths. I am one that's, we talked about the law of attraction, in our last episode. I attract empaths because that's who I am. And so, yeah, we absolutely are storing absorbed emotions. So not our own. And it does really impact if you think about the energy of an emotion. So think about it as like a little energetic, ping pong ball. So every piece of energy that you're absorbing from someone else is the size of a ping pong ball. Well, if you've absorbed energy from other people your entire life, are typically going to have I'll call it a weak spot. For me, that was L5. So I had
Oh.
really bad back issues. And so if you think about energy in like a crash on the highway and you have to cut off the off ramp or the on ramp to the highway so that the crash
Oh.
can be cleared up, the energy is literally backing up in the same spot over and over and over again. And energy is energy. It's going to push something out of place. And so for me, I ended up with a bulge disc at L5. And if you think about what that is, right, that's the sacral. That is safety and security. It's balance. That had been off for my entire life. And so it was no wonder, like once I really understood the energy and how it was impacting me, I was like, well, it's no wonder I had, past tense, had a bulge disc at L5, because through the chiropractor and energy work, I've been able to clear that. So I don't necessarily have the same back pain I did 5 or 6 years ago.
So important to notice not only where it is, but to remember that that piling up can cause physical symptoms. Well, speaking of piling up, do empaths have a bigger heart wall than other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say they do. I would say they do, because in a heart wall, we can absorb other people's emotions as well. I'm actually have a client, fairly new client, and we're working on the heart wall, and I think it's 28 feet.
Ooh.
Started at 28 feet. Think about 28 feet from from your body, your physical body. 28 feet. That is a huge energy network, for lack of a better term, right? It's an energy force that you have around your body. And essentially the heart wall is preventing you from feeling the things, right, that your ego has stored away, that your subconscious has stored away, that you don't necessarily want to feel. And as a heart, as the electrical, right, organ of our body, our heart has to communicate with the rest of our bodies. And if we have a 28-foot wall in front of it, it's not going to communicate the things it needs to communicate in the right way. So there are going to be, organs that are not functioning 100%, or connections, meridians, chakras, all of things aren't going to be communicating the right way with the rest of our bodies.
Well, through your investigation for yourself about understanding what an empath is, and you can include the time in which you were developing the program for other empaths. Was there like a big learning for you about either where you were storing energy other than the L5, or like something that you just didn't identify with being an empath?
Yes. So as I was in the depths of my own research and, really trying to figure out who Candice is, there are 3 major concepts that came up for me that I did not understand were part of being an empath, but now I do. One is codependency. And so maybe 4. So people pleasing, codependency, and boundaries. So 3. People pleasing, to your point, how am I making decisions? I am making decisions in the path of least resistance for myself, right? And because I can feel the disdain in somebody else when I'm making a decision that they don't like. Reading their face, I'm absorbing the emotions that they're having about it. And that's uncomfortable for me. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to, do what I think they want me to do, and not necessarily what's best for me. From a codependent standpoint, I was like, who's codependent over here? I am the most, right? But I am so independent. I don't need anybody's help. I can do everything on my own. And it took me a couple of times reading a book called Codependent No More.
That has to be the most popular book on codependency
series. Yes, it's amazing. The first time I read it, it was really hard. Because I wasn't ready to listen or to hear.
Yeah.
And so when I read it again a number of years later, I thought, oh, interesting. Codependency isn't just about, it isn't about me being independent. It's independent because I had to be independent, because I didn't have the network of support that I needed growing up, right? So I had to become hyper independent and lean on myself and not ask for help, because I wasn't sure if I was going to get that when I needed it, or I was shown that I wasn't going to receive that. And then boundaries, again, If you're people pleasing and codependent, you have no boundaries. And the boundaries piece, again, I didn't feel like I could create them because I could feel everybody's disdain when I was going to. And the concept of self-love is really what came in for the boundaries. Was I had to love myself enough to create the boundaries that I needed to for my own mental health. And everybody's like, oh, I love myself. I love myself. But when you really start digging into the self-love concept, if you are people pleasing, you're not having enough self-love. If you're in codependency, there's not enough self-love. If you're not creating boundaries, you're not having enough self-love. And that's another, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on that quite yet. That's still, in play. But when I understood, when I peeled back enough of other people's junk that I could say, this relationship, this interaction, the way that this makes me feel is not okay for me, that I have to create a boundary, that I, can't be in this person's life, or that I need some space from a particular situation, and be able to verbalize that and communicate that to someone without changing my stance when they are not happy with that. To me was the ultimate self-love for me. And then the empath piece rolls back in. It's like, but now I'm feeling everybody else's stuff, right? So it's a constant process for us to go through as empaths. But the more that you become less impacted and you're separating your energy from other people, and they don't impact you as much.
Yeah, it's funny. Boundaries were super challenging for me. And really, what I connected part of it back to was the uncomfortable piece of asking for what I want and need. I was so used to being focused on what other people wanted and needed.
Yes.
That asking for even a little thing, like instead of just saying, where do we want to go for lunch? And I had some place in mind. It was really challenging for me to be like, I really want to go eat at this place, right? Because that was I was so used to say, well, whatever they want, right? Whatever they want. And boundaries was hard. The other thing about boundaries is because they don't come with an announcement, I will be putting in boundaries moving forward, right? Or I'm trying something new by standing up for myself, asking for what I want and need, or practicing self-love. And everyone doesn't get the memo that that's what you're working on. It's confusing.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and the thing for boundaries, right? It's not, a lot of people think about boundaries as trying to control an outcome or trying to control someone else. That's not what a boundary is. Your boundary, to your point, is sitting down and understanding, what is it that I want? What is it that I'm willing, I don't want to say willing to put up with, but what am I willing to do in this relationship? How am I willing to participate? How am I not willing to participate? And then creating a boundary based on yourself. Not that, you need someone to stop doing this, but again, it's about taking responsibility for knowing ourselves well enough to know it is not good for my mental health to be in this situation, right? Like, I used to love going to concerts. My husband and I would go to concerts all the time. Now that I understand my own energy, being at a concert is so difficult for me. Being around that much energy, even if I protect it, even if I'm, clearing, it's just too hard. It's too much energy for me. And so we've stopped going to concerts because of that. I could do like a small one maybe, but like I'm not going to like some, massive concert anymore. And that's okay with me. Right? We did that when,
right. But
when I was younger.
Understanding how your body works, how you work as an empath, and then what you need.
Yeah.
To still feel good.
Yeah.
About what's going on. Well, we definitely talked about some resources for being an empath. You have the free guide on your website. We've talked a little bit about the benefits of the Empowered Empath program, but certainly I'm guessing that you have even more resources that you would recommend to people.
Yeah, for sure. So Dr. Judith Orloff wrote a book called The Empath Survival Guide. So Life Strategies for Sensitive People. I learned a lot from this book, and a lot of what I talked about today is in that book. And there's another book called The Empath's Workbook by
Mm,
Krista Carpenter.
okay.
Practical Strategies for Nurturing Your Unique Gifts and Living an Empowered Life. So those are two books that really were impactful for me. And then I think I mentioned the podcast The Mystic Michaela. Know Your Aura is what it's called. Again, if you go back to her very early episodes, she talks a lot about understanding about being an empath and how there's different types. And those were very, very impactful for me.
Okay. And then on the Empowered Empath program,
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a certain number of sessions. You want to give us a little background on what that looks like for somebody, and then how would somebody know that this program would be good for them?
Sure.
Because I did it by intuition, right?
Yeah.
I knew I was an empath, and then I waited until I heard that this was a thing that would be good for me
Mm-hmm.
and my healing.
Yes.
But I'm not sure that I would have realized the impact of being an empath just by knowing I was one.
Right. Yeah. So when you went through the program, we did 8 sessions. I've actually increased that to 10 sessions because I've added in a couple of new things that I've been certified in over the last year. So you get 10 sessions, and each of those sessions lasts up to 90 minutes. And that's different than my typical one-on-ones are about 60 minutes. So we get a good amount of time together. And in our overall goal in the Empowered Empath program is to help you understand how being an empath has impacted you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? So a real holistic approach. We're going to work on clearing your heart wall. We're going to work on the generational or ancestral emotional baggage that you have inherited. And that again is a huge piece because you can't sit in therapy and talk about how, 12 generations ago you had, frustration. You inherited something. So really getting into the inherited generational piece of how energy is being stored in your body and clearing that. What you're experiencing physically and emotionally. So a lot of people will come to me and say, I have this anxiety that's just constant. It just doesn't go away. Or, I'm depressed. I can't do all the things that I used to be able to do. Or it's just, I'm not able to put anybody's needs above my own. I'm in constant people pleaser mode. Any of those things, right? Not being able to create boundaries. Any of those things would be a reason why someone would come to this program. We're also, as part of the program, right? We're going to do what we just talked about, the physical, emotional stuff. We're going to do belief systems. So that's a new piece, a new tool in my tool belt. So releasing a faulty belief system and the belief statements that we're holding in our bodies. And that also associates with the trapped emotions and the physical aspect of where those beliefs, right, how they're impacting you. And Akashic Records reading, which is really fun. So understanding, was I an empath in a past life? How did that impact me? What was the lesson I was supposed to learn in that life? Am I learning that lesson again? What do I need to know to learn that lesson in this lifetime? Inner child healing. My gosh. We have
that piece was huge.
so many ages, right? That we have to go back and just nurture little Shelly and little Candice. So really taking back your power, right? That was a concept that was really foreign to me. So as we go through this life, unconsciously, we leave power behind. So sometimes people just take it from us, and other times we willingly let it go. And so recapturing and taking back that healed power is powerful. And then, of course, I utilize oracle cards, which I love. And then we also, as part of my healing process, I really looked at, after each session, what else could help me integrate the energy that I released? What else could help me kind of understand what was happening? And those things are crystals, right? And essential oils and flower essences. And so after each session, we look at, do you need additional support through one of those things? And that's all done intuitively, right? With the pendulum, with your subconscious. We'll look at all of that to help you and support you from session to session. So again, those sessions, there'll be 10 of them. The program, I don't have a specific time frame that it lasts. It lasts as long as it needs to. After each session, we'll muscle test to see when it's beneficial for you to do another session. So one thing with energy healing is you don't ever want to do too much. Energy hangover is a real thing, and you don't necessarily want one of those. So your body can only release so much energy at a time. So it could be, 5 days between sessions. It could be 10 days between sessions. And then, of course, we always have vacations and holidays and all those good things. So, between 2 and 3 months is when we'll get, those 10 sessions in. And, in between sessions, I might have you do some journaling work, or I might give you some, some homework to, to think about, or to, read a certain section of a book or what have you, for you to do some of your own work during this process too. Because that's a big, it's a big piece of healing is, we have healers in quotations, but I'm not healing you. You're healing yourself. I'm your guide. I'm your facilitator, but you're doing the hard work.
Yeah, I certainly journaled and meditated between sessions. And then when there's inner child work came up and they were ages I didn't remember, right? They would be conversations with my mom, conversations with my siblings that, to kind of to help me understand it better, right? And all of that's a part of that process. Not only was my body processing it for, 1 to 3 weeks, but there were other pieces that I was, I'll say, diving deeper into.
Yeah. Yep. And, we talked about the clairs a little bit. I think we've talked about it in a previous episode, but, I'm working with a client right now, and, she's looked at the empath stuff, and we've talked about it, and she's looked at the ebook. She's like, I don't think I have any of those clairs. I thought, everybody has a clair. We're born with them all. It's just a matter of which ones are more prominent than others. And so we started chatting about them a little bit. And I said, do you ever have a situation where you're in a conversation and somebody's asking you for your advice? Because as empaths, we give really good advice.
We're good listeners.
We're good listeners and we give really good advice. We don't always take our own, but. And I said, so you're in a conversation, somebody's asked you, right, for advice, and you start talking, and all of a sudden you are speaking information that you know nothing about, that you are surprised at is coming out of your mouth, but makes total sense. And she's like, yeah, all the time. And I was like, well, that's because you're clear cognizant, right? You have a clear knowing. It's the ability to just know things without a prior education or knowledge. And so she was like, that's what that is. I was like, yeah, you're essentially channeling, right? Information that's being brought into you. And she's like, that's really cool. And so, again, we all have clairs. It's just a matter of which ones are more prominent than others.
Yeah, well, you certainly, so go to your website to get the guide, and the guide is free.
That's right.
And certainly if anyone's interested in the Empowered Empath program, do you have a free clarity call where they can ask questions and understand more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a free 30-minute. Yeah, you call it a clarity call. What do I call it? I call it something else. Discovery call. And yeah, to book that in, I'll typically do a little mini session so that people will understand what the energy clearing looks like. yeah, I'm here to answer any questions. And, you can always do a one-on-one, for that 60-minute beforehand to see, if this feels good, if this is a good match. But yeah, everything's on my website. And I've also written 4 blog posts about each of the modalities and my own empath experience. So you can go and read more about the modalities in my blogs. So emotion code, body code, belief code, Akashic records. And then again, kind of my own experience as an empath and understanding all of that good stuff.
Well, the amazing part is how you bring them all together. The program absolutely helped me understand being an empath my entire life. And it's now interesting for me to see others and understand that they're also empaths.
Mm-hmm.
So, certainly, I think that folks at the very least should understand more about it. So, to get the free guide.
For sure.
But yeah, so certainly go to Candice's website if that sounds like something that you might be interested in. And certainly learning more about being an empath and how it affects you, your body, your mind, your spirit is extremely important.
Yeah. It is. It's why I do what I do now, right? I had a long corporate career that I left in 2021. And this journey, this process is what led me to create Indiglow Soul and this program. It's something I'm super, super passionate about. I want to help people understand their own energy so that they can show up as their most empowered self.
Yeah, I think that really says what I believe your mission is and how I've seen you work with myself and others.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
As we conclude this episode of Healers with Humor, we want to express our deepest gratitude to you, fellow Brightlights. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt exploration. Our journey began with a chance encounter at an expo, 2 souls seeking healing and connection. Through shared experiences, laughter, and tears, we forged a bond rooted in trust, love, and the relentless pursuit of growth. We invite you to continue this journey with us by sharing your own healing stories and connecting with us. Your presence in our community enriches our collective healing experience, and we're honored to walk alongside you. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore topics that resonate with the soul, offering insights, guidance, and inspiration along the way. Until then, remember, you are not alone on your healing journey. Thank you for tuning in, and may your path be illuminated with love, courage, and endless possibilities.